Welcome to On Texas Football. Time for the state of the program, our weekly episode brought to you by Adam Lowy, the Lowy Law Firm. In this show, we talk strictly about where we see big picture, the Longhorns headed, and there is no bigger picture. This is a statement game for state of the program. The Longhorns taking on Georgia this coming weekend after soundly defeating rival Oklahoma 34-3 in the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel join me, Bobby Burton. Guys, I look at it and there is no, I said it, statement game ad nauseum. This is, for the king of the SEC a little bit right now, right? Is that how y'all see it as well?
Yeah, maybe. I think the one thing is with this game is if Texas beats Georgia Saturday, they're going to have every first place vote. They're going to be the unquestioned number one team in the country. And they can ride that out as long as they keep winning this year. And it's not going to change. I think that's what this game does. And I think, look, there's always going to be around Texas because what happened the last 13, 14 years leading up to the last couple for Sark. There's always going to be the question of, well, is Texas really back? That question goes away. No matter if you go to win a national championship or not. If Texas beats Georgia after beating Alabama, after going to the playoff, and after beating Michigan this year, that question goes away. It's like, how long can Sark keep Texas up in the upper echelon? That whole discussion changes if Texas wins.
I was going to add the same thing. If you go out and you beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa, you beat Michigan in Ann Arbor, and then you beat, quote unquote, the gold standard at home with Georgia, then what else do you need to prove? And that obviously comes in the playoff. But to get to the playoff consistently, that's kind of what this is about for Texas, to have that opportunity to compete for a national championship or some type of hardware that comes back, right? Whether that be SEC, a playoff, a New York Six Bowl win, whatever it is. Obviously, the national championship is the end-all be-all goal. But to be in the conversation, to even make that is where Texas wants to be. And right now, being number one with potential wins over all three of those teams, that's Texas as in that upper echelon, as Gerry was talking about. It's a big measuring stick game. And again, Texas has been able to live up to every measuring stick game that they've played so far in the regular season over the past two years. This is the biggest one, and it's one that they're fortunately able to have at home with 105,000 folks screaming burn orange in the eyes of Texas.
I mean, you're right. I mean, you guys realize Texas in regular season over the last 2 years right now is sitting at, 17-1 in the regular season? I mean, that's roughly the same record as Georgia has in the regular season right now over the last 2 years. Nobody's done it better than the Longhorns, in my opinion, in the regular season so far. I got a question for you. Is this also a statement game for Steve Sarkisian versus Kirby Smart? Offense versus defense guy again, just like it was with Sark versus Brent Venables, offense versus defense. It will be later this year when it's Steve Sarkisian versus Mike Elko. What do y'all make of that?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. I'm going to turn it around a little bit, but I wanted to add something I forgot at the onset. There's going to be every NFL team's going to be represented, Bobby. There's going to be more media people at this game than has been at a Texas game in a long time. Texas is about to put on a show for the university as well of what the Texas program is. So for state of the program, no matter what the outcome is Saturday night of the game, when I think it's going to be a great game, two tremendously talented teams, people are going to walk away saying, University of Texas has this thing right. But from the question you asked about Sark, I almost want to say it's bigger for Kirby because his last two outings, the last two losses were Nick Saban and Kalen DeBoer. But for Sark, as you're rising, as you're still climbing that mountain, every coach that's a Hall of Famer you can beat is meaningful. And Nick Saban, that was a huge one last year, has 0-2 against Kalen DeBoer. So this will be a big one for Steve Sarkisian. But if he beat Georgia and Kirby Smart this week, I don't think there's any doubt about it, because the reality is Georgia, the last 3 years, has been the best program in college football. And with Texas moving to the SEC and we're wanting to recruit more similar players, yeah, this is a statement game for Sark.
I look at it a little differently than a coaching perspective. Head to head, it's great. Kind of having that coaching, acumen is huge, right? When it comes to having the skins on your wall and who you've beat and who you have the leg up on right now. Kalen DeBoer has that leg up on Steve Sarkisian, but in this game specifically, it's more so to me about the territory that you can claim recruiting wise. And we've talked about it, Gerry. We talked about it yesterday during the recruiting breakdown. The number of recruits coming in from Georgia, from Mississippi, from Louisiana, or from Florida. All of these guys have looked at Georgia and Alabama as the schools that they've wanted to have offers from. Texas has the best opportunity in the world right now with the tens of kids coming in from Georgia to say, hey, Georgia might have been your dream school. That might be the one right down the road. They are the gold standard. Kirby Smart's won multiple national championships. That's not who the hottest team in the country is right now. That's us. And when we talk about big wins and when they start to really feel, kind of that result in recruiting, it's 2 years down the road. And for the guys coming in, like a Dylan Berryman, a Tyler Atkinson, guys, a Mario Latimer, that are nationally acclaimed guys from the Southeast, this is a big opportunity for Steve Sarkisian to plant his flag in territories that previously there's not been a lot of success. But as you've seen each week and each win more, they're gaining more and more land down in that area.
It's interesting. You mentioned all 2026 guys there, not just the 2025s that are coming in, because this will impact, obviously, the next recruiting class as much or more than it impacts this one alone. So I find that interesting. All right, then need to say thank you and want to say thank you to our sponsor. That's Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, including motorcycle, 18-wheeler, ATV, give Adam and his group a call to see if you might be due compensation. They have a no strings attached policy. Give them a call. They'll tell you whether or not they think that you might be due compensation. LowyLawFirm.com. That's LowyLawFirm.com. Adam and his firm focus on delivering results for their clients each and every time. Again, LowyLawFirm.com. All right. We can talk about coaching staff and execution. This is going to be a big game, I think, for Quinn Ewers versus Carson Beck in that perspective. But I want to turn internally now to the Longhorn situation. And I want to talk about a couple of different positional battles that are kind of playing out before our very eyes right now. That's it. Running back with Trey Wisner and Jaden Blue. It's clear that Trey Wisner got the call in the second half of Mississippi State, and he got the call the entire game against Oklahoma. Is Wisner moving ahead now? It looks like it. Then I also want to talk about Longhorns Lefau. Is he moving to middle linebacker and allowing Anthony Hill now to be more of a disruptor, which is his natural kind of the natural thought process for him? He's the guy that can just make havoc plays. Or are they going to stick with David Benda against Georgia, a team that's more run heavy, maybe play action based? Those are things that we need to look for. And then you have the wide receiver group, Gerry and CJ, where Ryan Wingo's starting to get more time, as he should. He's, every time he touches the ball, it's like a big play waiting to happen, essentially. He also made a hustle play as a blocker on Trey Wisner's touchdown run. He's doing good things. You have Silas Bolden now maybe entering that circle of trust, as Rod Babers likes to call it, at wide receiver. Does that push down a Johntay Cook who only had 4 snaps on Saturday against Oklahoma? Is there somebody else that could lose snaps over this? Let's talk about internally what those position moves mean to you guys. And is it just in the state of Wisner versus Blue, let's start there. It's just a meritocracy, right? Whoever performs better and whoever doesn't turn the ball over is going to get the start or is going to play more. Is that how you guys see it?
Potentially, yes. I think that what's interesting is, so Texas, what they do in the run game, some of it, is better for Wisner. Some of it's better for Blue, but the passing game from the running back position definitely better for Blue, right? Although Wisner's talented in it, they run more stuff specifically for Blue. But I think, look, ball protection. I think the ability to run the football in the SEC. I think Wisner's got an advantage over Blue there. Now, you have to watch how many times Wisner touches the football. You know, you're playing against some big dudes the rest of the way on the defensive front. But I do think also pass pro, is Wisner even a tick ahead there?
He didn't look like it on Saturday. It looked like Blue was
didn't look like it as much. But so I think if you take running the football, which Texas has to have, and a lot of it will depend on what runs are going to be successful in their eyes or end up being successful in a game. Against Oklahoma, remember, they were running inside zone to start, and then they went to the wide zone and the outside zone with Gunnar Helm pulling, and that better suits Trey Wisner. So some of it may be what suits who in the run game, what's clicking that day. But I think Wisner is ahead. Whoever starts, I don't really think it matters. I think it'll be decided by what run game is working, what is in the run game that's working. Because Blue, even if Wisner's the guy that's carrying it more, Blue's is very effective out of the backfield and what Sark wants to do.
CJ, you think it's situational entirely, or is it performance, or what do you think?
I think it largely hinders on performance right now, especially when you look at what Texas wants to do in its balance offensively. You want to have some sort of run game. And Texas has found that with Trey Wisner over the last 2 weeks, right? 23 touches. You're up near 8 yards per carry. You found the end zone multiple times. You see the explosive plays this year. And I think you could list the longest rushes by running backs and then in the Texas program right now, and the top 4 would all be Trey Wisner right now. I don't think anybody expected that about week 8 into this year, right? And the one thing that you need to have when you have kind of a two-headed back like this is balance, right? When one guy's on the field, you can't be guessing run play the entire time. When the other's on the field, you can't be hinting at a pass play is coming regardless. So you're going to see the two continue to kind of trade off in situational runs. You know, you're going to see the two upwards of about 8 to 15 runs, somewhere in that run, that category between the two. The snap count was really interesting against Oklahoma. It was the first game that Trey Wisner had 33 or more snaps. Jaden Blue had 27. So you see the kind of that almost 55-45 split between the two. But again, there's just something about the way Trey Wisner runs the football that's very similar to a Jonathan Brooks, a Roschon Johnson, a Bijan Robinson, in which their patience, their vision, their decision-making is very slow in the process of letting blocks set up in front of them, which, again, to Gerry's point, it's very opportunistic for a guy like Jaden Blue to get the ball in space and just go. That's not necessarily how this blocking scheme sets up in front of him.
Yeah, I think Wisner breaks more tackles than Blue, right? I mean, y'all all agree with that, even though he may be slighter build.
Yeah.
I just think he breaks more tackles, and I think because of that, you're going to see him run it. And you know what? I would sit here and say that Wisner protects the ball better than Blue, but Wisner fumbled on Saturday. Just happened to be recovered by Texas, unlike Blue's 2 fumbles against Mississippi State. So, you know, just something to watch. And as we go through this and talk about Texas in the running back position, those two are clearly the top 2. Jarrett Gibson's carries really went down against the Sooners. He was nothing more than a bit role player compared to in previous games, and when Texas tried to get that inside zone running against other teams. So the running back position, interesting. Let's move to linebacker now, where we've kind of seen a shift change. We've seen Longhorns Lefau be inserted into the middle linebacker role, displacing Anthony Hill and allowing him to go out and be more of a outside linebacker with a little more freedom, a little more chase ball as opposed to hard responsibilities. That obviously moves David Benda, one of the team's captains, to the bench at times. Is that clearly Texas thinks that's a good move, or else they wouldn't make it. What does that do, though, in total for the defense? CJ, I'll let you start.
Sarkisian mentioned it on Monday. It frees up Anthony Hill. And when you watch what they were able to do against Oklahoma, he's absolutely right. We saw more of Anthony Hill off the edge. We saw more Anthony Hill over the head of a guard. We saw more of Anthony Hill just being able to play freely in pass coverage as well. And when you're able to have a guy of his talent, of his stature, of his instincts just roaming around playing freely, well, then good things happen. And when you have guys like Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and Ethan Burke and Barron Sorrell that you can kind of match up and say, okay, Anthony Hill, go blitz. We know that we trust the linebackers next to you to cover your spot in space, play well in the passing game, and you can still get after the quarterback. Well, good luck stopping all three of the combination of guys that I just mentioned, because that's a pretty difficult thing to do. With David Benda specifically, I think the strengths of him and the strengths of Anthony Hill are very similar, right? They both play very well moving forward, but when one drops back into coverage, do you trust them to cover the space of two men? Right now, I'd say that's the biggest differentiator. On top of that, we've seen Wisner and Lefau play very well coming up. It's no drop-off in that regard. He has a safety, he has multiple sacks, he has multiple tackles for loss, but in space, he doesn't look like he's out of place, and he's always in that spot where he can make a tackle immediately after the catch, which is something, again, that has been a point of emphasis for this defense. So all in all, just frees up Anthony Hill without kind of putting anything in that passing game at risk in the middle of the field.
Yeah, and Gerry, I would say this. I'm looking at the tackling leaders right now. Anthony Hill, a good 10 ahead of David Benda. Benda has played much more than Lefau. But if you look at the sack leaders here, Lefau actually has 2 sacks, Anthony Hill 4.5, Colin Simmons 4. What do you think of the move with Lefau right now as it relates to Anthony Hill and David Benda?
First, I just want to say, could you imagine us talking about Malcolm Roach playing middle linebacker against Maryland on one of these YouTubes? But 2, more importantly, God, thank goodness we're not. But number 2, look, I think Lefau instinctively is the best inside linebacker. And I'll leave Ty Anthony out of it because he's a freshman, but I think he's close. But Wisner and Lefau was born to kind of play that spot. Ray Lewis used to call it, he still calls it, but at the camps, reading the triangle. He's absolutely the best that Texas has of that. Reading center, guard, D-line, all the movement, all the trash, reading it, diagnosing it. He's the best by far. He is a tremendously instinctive player in between the hashes. And I think that was important against Oklahoma because they knew it was going to be misdirection central over there. They probably had a feeling, all right, with Michael Hawkins, we can't be having 2 guys running the wrong way. Else that's going to create explosives for Oklahoma when they shouldn't really get explosives against our defense. And I'm not saying anything able to run the wrong way, but I'm saying super aggressive guys that can false step and get going one direction. And then the
over pursuit. Yeah.
Wisner and Lefau was going to play in his instinctive box right there. But I think so combining that with Anthony Hill on the outside, when you can start putting Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons next to each other in a blitz scheme, I mean, if you're Ernest Green, you're like, ooh, man, I can't. How am I going to set here? What do I know Fairchild's going to help me here? I mean, that adds a different pressure and to a Mike Bobo calling plays. So I think it definitely is going to help in the run game with Wisner and Lefau playing more inside backer because teams are going to try to run, and Georgia's going to try, even though their strength is pass pro. They're going to try to run it at Texas and see if Texas is going to hold up. I don't think there's any doubt this is a hat brings hat early in this game. And Georgia said, all right, can y'all stop us?
That's why I'm wondering if Lefau and that move matters as much because David Benda is actually a stronger player. He's got 2 years or 3 years experience even on Lefau. So I'm wondering what that means in this game if Georgia starts running right at Texas. It's not so much the over pursuit I'm worried about against Georgia, like I was Oklahoma. It's hat on hat. Is David Benda got more punch right now because he's older and more experienced? So we'll see. All right, the next piece for you guys, and that is the wide receiver room. We talked about it all preseason. How big or how many of these receivers would actually get time? And we said it would be a process where, some guys might work in, some guys might start off and then kind of accelerate into it. For the first time, we saw a shrinking of that room against Oklahoma. Furthermore, we saw an even further shrinking because Isaiah Bond went out in the first half, and Texas still didn't go heavy to its bench beyond 4 players. With Bond out, they went – Matthew Golden played almost every snap on offense, but 60-plus snaps. Is that right? Then you had Silas Bolden got action. Ryan Wingo's snap count went up as well. And DeAndre Moore continues to be a positive aspect of this offense. That left Johntay Cook there. Is this just expectations, or is there something more to this? I mean, can Cook come back and see 15 to 20 plays, for example, this week? Or is this a true tightening of the receiver rotation, in y'all's opinion? CJ?
To me, it's about who's fitting what they want to do. Texas played a lot of 21 and 12 personnel. That leaves you 2 wide receivers on the field, right? We've seen it more times than not this year in an important early down situation. It's going to be Matthew Golden. It's going to be Isaiah Bond. Well, when you add a third, what can that guy do to kind of complement and supplement what those guys can do? With DeAndre Moore, he's going to be a physical guy that can get vertical. That helps in the run game with his blocking. With Ryan Wingo, he's a big play waiting to happen. With Silas Bolden, it's a guy that you can move around almost in a way. It's a 21 personnel because you can line him up out of the backfield. We saw that against Oklahoma. He's that jet or orbit motion guy with his quickness. Defenses have to respect and adjust. With Johntay, the thing is, what can he do that is extraordinary compared to the other guys in that room right now? And that's where I kind of struggle to see him getting onto the field, because you've seen the big plays from everybody else. And what can he do to separate himself from the bunch? And he's had some opportunities. Unfortunately, that big play against Mississippi State's the one that you point to and say, well, that could have gone a little differently, right? You would have liked to have seen that completed and hauled in for a touchdown. But can he block up to the standard of what we've seen with Golden and more? Can he get loose like an Isaiah Bond? Can he create separation and win the contested catches like a Ryan Wingo? I don't know if we had the answers to those right now. And I think that's why you're seeing the shrinking of that wide receiver room at the moment. Could he come back with a big game against Georgia? Sure, but I think that would only be because a guy like Isaiah Bond would not be able to go with whatever ankle injury he's dealing with, which is something that we should be monitoring moving forward as well. But the point is, he needs to be showing something in his opportunities on the field that no other wide receiver can do. And right now, I don't know if there's something that we've seen from Johntay that says, I can't get this anywhere else in this room.
Gerry, what do you think? Receiver room shrinking?
Yes.
Or
yes.
not?
Yes. I think it's shrinking in meaningful games for sure. And look, if you're not one of the fastest guys in a fast room, you better not drop touchdowns. I mean, that's really all I can say is like that play against Mississippi State didn't cause you to lose a game. That play against Georgia Saturday could.
Absolutely.
Matthew Golden's not dropping balls this year. Ryan Wingo hasn't dropped balls this year. Even Isaiah Bond, right? Silas Bolden makes the diving catch, which was still arguable whether that was a catch. So if you're not the speed guy that can take the top off.
DeAndre Moore had issues last year catching in spring game and elsewhere, but he didn't have an issue this year so far either.
I mean, so if you're not the guy that can take the top of the defense off and add to that, like a Silas Bolden scares people when he's out there. You know? If you don't scare people when you're out there with your deep vertical speed, and that doesn't mean you can't get behind people. If you don't scare the guys coming in, the opponent coming into the game, then you have zero margin for error with your hands. Bottom line.
All right, I want to. I think I agree with you guys both. It's a little bit of a shrinking, and I do think it's situational. Let's go to the next point, and that's Derek Williams' injury. That changes the safety rotation. Jelani McDonald, guys, had his most snaps of the year. Obviously, Andrew Makuba and Michael Taff are the starters back there. And we saw Jordan Johnson-Rubel have the most snaps he's had in his career at Texas in a game. Is he now the fourth safety with Williams out for the season? Is that how y'all read that as well?
Yeah, I think so. I think Derek Williams is actually a big loss as the season moves along defensively. because I do think he's the best. Rod calls him alley cat, run force, whatever you want to call him. He's the best natural downhill safety against the run. And I think that was missed in the Mississippi State game. That wasn't probably talked about enough. And just think about the play he made against Taylor Tatum. No other safety has made that play against the run this season, physically like that. To dislodge a ball against a running back that pretty much had played perfect to the position up to the contact. I think that's, so I think that is a potential issue to watch if people have any success running the ball up front against Texas. How's that back end filling in these SEC games coming up? I do think Johnson-Rebel is going to play meaningful snaps this year at the University of Texas. That's why you come to the University of Texas. But 2 weeks ago, I don't think Jordan Johnson-Rebel was probably thinking, my gosh, I'm going to be on the field against Georgia in the second quarter of this game.
Yeah.
Now he is. And instinctively, smart, intelligence, he's ready to roll. Now, that doesn't mean he didn't have a miscue. I can't remember who that was. He had somewhat of an assignment bust. Maybe it was ULM or maybe it was UTSA. It doesn't mean he won't have a moment like that. He's a freshman, and there's going to be a bunch of fast guys moving around him. But he's ready for the task. I mean, he was prepared for this.
Yeah. CJ, what do you think?
Mentally, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the calling card of Jordan Johnson-Rebel going back to IMG. Jerry, we've talked to him in Orlando. You've seen him in person in high school. You talk to anybody around him, they say that's a smart football player. He's a leader of his guys at IMG, and he's a guy at IMG where you didn't see many opportunities because of the guys up front in that front seven, but you see him now start to progress a little bit quicker. 20 snaps, 18 snaps, whatever it was against Oklahoma. That's the most that the staff's trusted him in any game this year, and he's going to have to be a guy that they get up to speed very quickly because, look, Jelani McDonald has missed several games this year.
No
Michael
doubt.
Taft's been dinged up in a few games that have not allowed him to finish games. Andrew Makuba, only about 185, 90 pounds. Listen, that you're going to need a fourth guy. And what Derek Williams done for the year, he's a guy that they're leaning on right now. We've seen it already, the staff, in terms of the freshman safeties. Xavier Phil-Sami is on path to be redshirted this year. If that's the case, and again, I think it is, Jordan Johnson-Rebel is going to be your fourth guy. And again, he's going to have to be up to speed immediately because he's not a guy that you're going to spin down to the box like you've seen with the Michael Taft, like you've seen with the Jelani McDonald. He's a center fielder like Andrew Makuba. And right now, that's a very thin line that Texas is towing with the absence of Derek Williams.
All right. I want to say thanks one last time to our sponsor, then have one final question about Quinn Ewers versus Carson Beck. Thank you very much to our sponsor, Adam Lowy of the Lowy Law Firm. Reach out to Adam and his group. If you've been injured in a car wreck, automobile accident, anything like an 18-wheeler, motorcycle, ATV, and want to get a free consultation, no strings attached, loweylawfirm.com. That's LOEWY lawfirm.com. 20-plus years experience helping injured Texans across the state and even nationally. Also, a guy that you can trust to do the best he can. He works on satisfying clients every single time. Thanks to Adam for his sponsorship of On Texas Football. All right, guys, Quinn Ewers versus Carson Beck. You know, it's pretty easy. That's what we thought this game would look like preseason. Two Heisman hopefuls. They were the two Heisman leaders in the preseason, right? People bet on those two. Is that going to be the case on Saturday, or is there more to it than just Ewers versus Beck? What do you think?
Both of them have to have offensive lines perform well in pass pro. If not, they're not mobile guys. I mean, they both need pockets against very fast athletes on defense. Carson Beck's thrown 5 interceptions in the last 3 games. Threw 3 at Bama under pressure, and he threw 2 in the first half, a couple of bad ones. Threw 2 against Mississippi State Saturday. So he's had 400-yard games in each of those games. He's attempted 49 and 50 passes in those games. So 99 pass attempts against Alabama, Mississippi State, 5 interceptions. That's a pretty high rate.
Yeah, 1 out of every 20.
That's pretty high rate. So, and Alabama got pressure on him early, and that caused 2 of those turnovers. So I hate to put it all on offensive lines, but when you're dealing with pocket passing quarterbacks in both of these offenses, they have more development time in their passing game. I think offensive lines are massive in pass pro for both of these guys because they both have to be able to play within the pocket. So whoever has the best pocket then has to deliver the ball on time and accurately. And I think that's I think Quinn's been better before Saturday this season, but that doesn't mean he will be this Saturday. I think he's going to have a bounce back game, though.
I look at it a little differently. I think it's which team's wide receivers and playmakers can get open down the field. They're going to be pressured. Can you find ways to separate on a slant? Can you find ways to separate on a bang eight or a comeback or a curl or whatever it might be? That's going to be the key to me. And I look at Georgia this year, and I've said it before. I don't think that they have that Ladd McConkey. I don't think that they have that Brock Bowers. They're missing a George Pickens right now. You look at Arian Smith, and he's probably the closest thing they have to a home run hitter. He's got 3 touchdowns this year of 40 yards or more. It's pretty significant.
He can run. That dude can run now.
But who next to him, Bobby, can they point to and say, okay, I know he's going to get open? Texas has had a few guys, right? Ryan Wingo, opposite of Isaiah Bond. Matthew Golden, opposite of Isaiah Bond. Those 3 right now you can rely on to win their routes one-on-one. I've not seen it this year from a Dylan Bell. I've not seen it this year from a Dominic Levet. So if that's the key, can Texas continue to play sound coverage and not allow the big explosive plays? Because I again, it's going to be a pretty net neutral in terms of Georgia's pass rushers versus the Texas offensive line and vice versa. Who can win down the field in those one-on-one reps? We saw Ryan Williams have his way with that Georgia defense in that secondary. Of course, he's a special talent. But I think Texas has more guys on the field with that speed and separation ability than Georgia at the moment. And I think that's going to help a guy like Quinn Ewers pretty significantly in this game.
Well, I got to say this. Watch the Georgia-Mississippi State game. And granted, Mississippi State has given up passing yards to everybody they've played. But there are a lot of Georgia wide receivers running wide open down the field, on the sideline, etc. Again, maybe it's who they played. But what
happened against Kentucky?
Yeah, that's true. It didn't happen against Kentucky. That's fair statement. They're also incorporating Anthony Evans, a real speedy guy, into the offense now more than they had in the past, and throwing a lot to him in the outside bubble screen kind of area. So we'll see what they do. My take on it is, whoever has the better game of the quarterbacks, and this is that person wins. That team wins. I do think it's going to come down to them because I do think both offensive lines are good enough. I think Texas is a little bit better in pass pro than Georgia. I think Georgia's better than Texas in the run game. I mean, I think they may be the 2 best offensive lines in the country. We'll see. And I think it's going to come down to execution, game planning from the coaches, and quarterback play. All right, that'll do it for this state of the program. Thank you again to Adam Lowy and the Lowy Law Firm. Also, thank you to Gerry Hamilton and CJ Vogel. We'll be back later today with the live stream around 7 o'clock. Myself, Rod Babers, CJ Vogel will be joining you. Till next time, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em.